We're here this afternoon to unveil a plaque to Ira Aldridge, the great African-American actor, who in 1828, during the age of slavery, he was invited to run the Coventry Theatre, which was here. It was an astonishing achievement for him and for the town. He was a great success as a theatre manager. He saved an ailing company, and he was 20 years old.
When he was playing, there were protests taking place on London streets for people against or for the abolition of slavery bill. So that was going on, that was going through Parliament.
About Ira Aldridge, who was called the African Roscius by some of his fans, Roscius being a great Roman actor.
The roles that I listed, Macbeth, King Lear, Othello, and Richard III, he played all of them at some point or another.
So he won like a lot of acclaim with that role then.
Will convey the passion of Ira Aldridge, but the humanity of what he was facing.
That's happening in the world today, to see where we've come from and where we are now, and not only see the journey of what it's like for an African American, particularly in the artistic field, but to see how relevant it still is. This story takes place a long time ago, but to see that these kind of things are still happening in 2018.
Is a great Shakespearean actor, a great black actor, a great pioneering talent in many ways. But people hadn't really registered the fact that he actually is also the first black theatre manager, that he actually ran a company, put it together, saved a theatre that was in trouble.
Shakespeare, the genius that he was, seemed to foreshadow and understand many of the problems that have since arisen in our world, perhaps were present then. First, I would say that here is a part which has dignity for the Negro actor. Often we don't get those opportunities. And I would say that my people will be very proud of my or any other Negro actor appearing in such a part.
I asked the question what because I believe there's something more to explore to Ira Aldridge than to who he was. I believe asking the who is important, but as we will see as we dive deeper into his upbringing, his career, and his family life, there's so much more than the who. A thespian and an inspiration, of course, but what about his other titles? A father, Othello, adulterer, a mentor, and ahead of the rest of the world. There are many hats that sit on the top of his head, and that's why we'll be looking at the what he was, to see the impact that Ira Aldridge had on the rest of the world. Ira Frederick Aldridge was born in New York City on July 24, 1807, to free African Americans Daniel and Lorona Aldridge. Daniel Aldridge was a reverend at a local church for blacks. Ira's parents encouraged him to follow his father's path and become a pastor, but he studied classical education at the African Free School in New York City. This was an institution founded by members of the New York Manumission Society in 1787. Members included Alexander Hamilton and John Jay. It was founded to provide education to children of slaves and free people of color. While there, he started acting at age 13, and by age 15, he was associating himself with professional black actors in the city. It was these black actors who encouraged Ira to get involved in the African Grove Theater. This was a black theater group which was founded by William Henry Brown and James Hewlett in 1821. He apprenticed under Hewlett, who started performing as a vocalist and as an actor described as Shakespeare's proud representative in African Grove Theater, when it wasn't just an exhibition held in Brown's Tea Garden. He is most known for starring in African Grove's performance of Richard III. Though Aldridge was gainfully employed as an actor in the 1820s, he felt that the United States was not a hospitable place for African American performers. Many whites resented the claim to cultural equality.
New York provided no satisfactory outlet for my ambition, so I set sail for England.
Realizing this, Aldridge emigrated to Europe in 1824.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Covent Garden Company, may I present Mr. Ira Aldridge.
Good afternoon.
In the afterpiece, Mr. Aldridge, as Mungo, called forth the loudest applause. His personification of the double-faced, roguish African was excellent. We can imagine nothing superior to this drollery as the perfect manner in which he identified himself with the character. The best proof of which was the continued roar of laughter in which he kept the house till the close of the piece, which nothing but high genius could have excited under unfavourable circumstances, the music being of the most wretched description, in addition to which the other performers had their parts, but very imperfectly.
On October 10, 1825, Aldridge made his debut at London's Royal Coburg Theatre, located just southeast of Waterloo Station on the corner of the Cut and Waterloo Road in Lambeth, London, England. Established in 1818 as the Royal Coburg Theatre and renamed in 1833 to the Royal Victoria Theatre, and in 1871 it would later be rebuilt and reopened as the Royal Victoria Palace. It was here that Ira became the first African-American actor to establish himself professionally in a foreign country. He played the lead role of a Runoko in the Revolt of Suriname.
Our opinion of the talents of the African Rochus is heightened as we continue to witness his versatility in performing various characters. His conception of characters perfect, and his acting, which in an European would be more than respectable, is in an African truly wonderful.
It was here that Aldridge played his role of Othello that he is so famously credited to be the first African-American to perform. Other roles from the Royal Coburg Theatre include A Slave's Revenge, soon to be followed by the role of Gambia in The Slave, The Castle Spectre, The Padlocked, Maturin's Bertram, the title role in Shakespeare's Richard III, and Shylock in The Merchant of Venice. In 1831, Aldridge began touring around European countries, performing in towns such as Bath, Edinburgh, Devon, Budapest, and he had great success in Germany. Apparently, he was planning on a tour back to America much later in his life to perform at New York City's Academy of Music. Unfortunately, Aldridge died before he had the chance.
Mr. Aldridge was playing Othello with his usual power when, in the last act, at the moment, he placed a dagger at the breast of Desdemona, a young lady who, seated in the pit, had been watching the performance throughout which the most breathless attention had her feelings so powerfully wrought upon this consummation of the guilt of them all. Then she gave a loud hysterical shriek and fell back on her seat.
During his time in London in 1824, Ira had met and married an English woman 10 years older than himself. Margaret Gill had been known for being ill previously to becoming Ira Aldridge's first wife, and it had been made apparent that she could not have children early in the couple's marriage.
Margaret Aldridge, she was married to Ira for years until she died. And they have a close relationship. I think she's very kind of non-theatrical and is very just practical, and she looks after the tickets and takes all the money at the door when they're on tour around the regional theatres. So she's kind of from a completely different world.
She would have been 49 when Ira Daniel Aldridge, Ira's first son, would have been born. Although the mother who gave birth to this child had been a mystery to most, it was no secret that Ira had been having several affairs. Suspicion naturally falls on actresses with whom Aldridge worked in theaters at Margate, Portsmouth, Lansport, Wolverhampton, and Bremerton approximately 9 months before May of 1847. Aldridge may have had affairs with other women even earlier. In the 1841 census records for Workshop, a small town southeast of Sheffield reveals that on the day the census was taken, he was rooming in a boarding house there with a woman identified as Sarah Aldridge. She was about 5 years younger than he was, so this could not have been Margaret under a different name. Sarah also could not have been Aldridge's sister because she was listed as not having been born in foreign parts nor in Scotland. Ireland, or even Nottinghamshire for that matter. Perhaps she was an actress in the theater troupe Aldridge had joined in workshop that week, or maybe she was an old friend he had brought along for companionship on his tour. There is even a possibility that she might have been the woman who 6 years later gave birth to Ira Daniel, but Aldridge is not known to have any lengthy affairs at this stage in his life. Whoever the biological mother was, Margaret Aldridge raised the boy as her own, even in her state of sickness and growing weak from age. During Aldridge's tour in 1860, Margaret's health began to fail her severely, so she had not joined Ira on this tour. It is during this tour where Aldridge, now age 53, met 26-year-old Swedish woman Amanda Paulina Brandt, whom he had struck up an affair with. It was that same year that Amanda gave birth to Aldridge's first daughter and future opera singer, Irene Lorana Pauline Aldridge. It was after this that Aldridge had bought a separate home in London away from Margaret and Ira Daniel, but close enough he could stay in good relations with the two families. It was during this time that Margaret's health degraded to very low standards. Ira and Amanda had their second child, Ira Frederick Olaf Aldridge. After 40 years of a loving marriage, even if it was filled with infidelity, Margaret had passed away on March 25, 1864, leaving 18-year-old Ira Daniel with his father, who had come back for the funeral and left right away back on tour. The following year, Ira had married Amanda on April 20th, 1865. Ira Daniel had sent a letter to his father stating, "My dearest father, I write to congratulate you on the occasion of your marriage and to wish you and my dear stepmother every joy and happiness in your new relationship. I am sure that you will find in Madame a true and loving wife, and one who will fill the lonely void so recently left in your home and your heart. I shall use my best endeavor to continue to deserve your love, and shall strive to the utmost of my power to win that of my stepmother by deference to her wishes and brotherly kindness to her children. That you may be long spared to enjoy ever-increasing happiness in the most earnest wish of your dutiful and affectionate son, Ira Daniel Aldridge." After issues arising from Ira Daniel's misbehavior and quite a few misconducts with the law, Ira Daniel had been sent away, being that Amanda was pregnant during this time. After moving to Melbourne in 1866, Ira Daniel had tried to become an actor as his father, receiving the same role his father had played in The Padlock. However, reviews were devastating, and this is when Ira Daniel began teaching and tutoring for schools in Melbourne. It was during this time that Amanda had given birth to Ira's third child, who would eventually become a famous opera singer in Europe. Being a singer of mixed race, African American and Swedish Caucasian, and with her family background in the performing arts, she was provided with opportunities to both obtain an education at the highest level and to have experiences that she needed to establish a solid career. Amanda Ira Aldridge studied voice at the Royal College of Music and performed and taught throughout her life. Throughout her career, she was driven to explore the importance to her ties to the African American culture through composition. Aldridge was as a pivotal performer for African American classic songs in this time period. After studying with Jenny Lind, known as the Swedish Nightingale, and featured in the contemporary musical The Greatest Showman, and George Henschel, Amanda made her career creating and composing art songs that often contain poetry by African American poets. Her most famous work, The Three African Dances for Piano, which was inspired by West African drumming. All of her compositions were under a pen name, Montague Ring, which was an association to her father's acting career. This was the beginning of sharing African American culture between London and the U.S., more specifically Harlem. Many students that eventually appeared on the U.S. stages had Aldridge as their teacher. Among her students were Marian Anderson and Paul Robeson. Her most famous work that I had mentioned before, Three African Dances, is what you are listening to in the background of this section. Aldridge enjoyed enormous fame as a tragic actor during his lifetime, but after his death he was soon forgotten in Europe. The news of Ira Aldridge's death in Poland and the record of his achievement as an actor reached the American black community slowly. In African American circles, Aldridge was a legendary figure. Many black actors viewed him as an inspirational model, so when his death was revealed, several amateur groups sought to honor his memory by adopting his name for their companies. In 1932, Ira Aldridge was one of the 33 theater professionals and notable people who were honored with chair plaques at the Shakespeare Memorial Theater in Stratford. After Ira Aldridge, the next black actor to play Othello in Stratford was Paul Robeson. He had played the role in London in 1930. Progress was clearly slow after the initial success of Aldridge, and there was still a long way to go before black actors were able to have the same opportunities for parts as white actors. For example, white actors continued to play Othello long into the mid-late 20th century. Aldridge is given credit for bringing Shakespeare to countries including Poland, which up until the point could only hear Shakespeare's drama in German or Russian, the two dominant language translations of the original text. The point I'm intending to make in mentioning all of this is Aldridge is a hero, not only within the theater performing arts world, but to African Americans everywhere. His life was influential for years after his passing, and I believe credit is somewhat not given to the amazing man who of which overcame many obstacles and heartaches through his life, and we barely have scratched the surface. This is what Ira Aldridge was.
This is the story of how an actor set out to change the world and how a council run by people for whom slavery was abhorrent decided that here was someone who could help. Ray will tell you the end of this part of the story.
Ira Aldridge moved on. But when he did, as you've heard, the citizens of Coventry wrote a petition appealing to Parliament to abolish slavery. Ira Aldridge used the stage to talk about what mattered. He won people's hearts with tragedies and farces, melodramas and comical songs. He thrilled them to the core. When he ended his run in a city and the applause died down, he would give them a farewell speech to remind them there was awful injustice in the world outside the glittering theater, but also why theaters matter. Through deserts wide, the Negro strays alone. In happy innocence, untaught, unknown. But soon the white man comes, allured by gain, or his free limbs fling slavery's galling chain. Transforms him to a brute. But list, the time is nigh. Freedom approaches from the western sky. Sheds her bright glory to the Indian seas, and shakes her banner o'er the Caribbees. Though we must part, my best protector still, my heart would cherish till its pulse is still. Its proudest record, the fresh memory that here, the sable African was free. Thank you, Ira Aldridge.